Why did my husband walk out of that crowded restaurant, leaving everyone silent and staring? How could one simple request, switching seats so my guy friend could be next to me, spark the unraveling of my carefully managed double life? I never imagined that a single act of disrespect would trigger the end, but as the legal documents landed on my doorstep, I realized there's no hiding when the truth comes out. The downtown bistro buzzed with Friday evening energy as I adjusted my phone against the wine glass, making sure the angle captured my best side. The lighting was perfect, golden hour streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting that Instagram-worthy glow across our table. Simon sat across from me, methodically cutting his salmon, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. "Babe, look at me for a second," I said, flashing my brightest smile as I hit record. Simon glanced up, his dark eyes tired from another long week at the finance firm. At 36, he'd developed permanent worry lines that made him look older than his years. "What are you doing, Erythra?" "Just making a memory," I lied smoothly, my heart racing with anticipation. The trend had been blowing up all week, girlfriends publicly rejecting their boyfriends' fake proposals, then revealing it was all a joke. The reactions were priceless, and the videos were getting millions of views. I'd been planning this moment for days, ever since Kellan mentioned how boring our relationship looked on social media. He was right, of course. Simon and I had been together for 8 years, married for 6, and our content had become painfully domestic. Grocery runs, liars' soccer games, quiet dinners, nothing that screamed relationship goals. "Simon Vale," I announced loudly, my voice carrying across the crowded restaurant. Conversations at nearby tables began to quiet as people turned to look. "Perfect. We need to talk." His fork paused midway to his mouth. "Here? Now?" "Yes, here. Now." I stood up, making sure my voice projected to the growing audience. My phone captured everything: his confused expression, the way other diners pulled out their phones to record, the anticipation crackling through the air. Simon set down his fork slowly, his finance manager instincts kicking in. He always got that look when he sensed something was wrong, calculating, cautious, like he was reviewing a suspicious budget report. "Erythra, what's going on?" "I can't do this anymore," I declared, gesturing dramatically. The words felt powerful, electric. Around us, phones appeared like magic, everyone eager to witness what they thought was a real breakup. "This relationship, this life, it's suffocating me." The color drained from Simon's face. "What are you talking about? You never listen to me. You never make me feel special. All you care about is work and being responsible." I was improvising now, feeding off the energy of our audience. I need someone who sees me, really sees me. Simon's eyes darted around the restaurant, taking in the cameras, the whispered conversations, the way our server had stopped mid-stride to watch the drama unfold. "Erythra, please, can we discuss this privately?" "No, I'm done hiding how I feel." I reached into my purse, pulling out the fake engagement ring I'd bought for the bit. "I can't accept this life anymore, Simon. I deserve better." I threw the ring onto the table with a dramatic flourish. It bounced off his water glass with a satisfying clink, and I heard someone gasp behind me. The performance was flawless. I could already imagine the comments, the shares, the way this would blow up across all platforms. Simon stared at the ring, then at me, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched between us, heavy and electric. This was the moment, the pause before the big reveal that would make everything perfect. But instead of the confusion or hurt I expected, something shifted in Simon's eyes, something cold and final. He reached into his jacket pocket with deliberate calm, pulling out a manila envelope I'd never seen before. My name was written across the front in his precise handwriting, "Erythra Vale, private and urgent." "Since we're doing this publicly," he said quietly, his voice steady, despite the chaos around us, "I suppose this is as good a time as any." He placed the envelope on the table between us, right next to the fake ring. The weight of it seemed to make the entire table sag. "Simon, what?" I started, but he was already standing. "Enjoy your moment, Erythra," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying more weight than all my dramatic declarations. I hope it was worth it. He walked away without looking back, leaving me standing there with dozens of phones pointed at my face and an envelope that suddenly felt like a bomb waiting to explode. The crowd began to murmur, some applauding what they thought was a dramatic breakup, others looking confused by the anticlimactic ending. I forced a smile, gave a little wave to the cameras, and sat back down. "Plot twist," I announced, trying to salvage the moment. "It's just a trend, everyone. We're fine." But Simon was already gone, and the envelope sat there like an accusation. I slipped it into my purse without opening it, my hands shaking slightly. The trend required a happy ending, the couple laughing together, revealing the joke, showing their real relationship. Instead, I sat alone in a restaurant full of strangers, my phone still recording an empty chair. The drive home felt endless. I'd posted the video with a caption about relationship pranks gone wrong, and when your partner doesn't get the joke, but the responses weren't what I'd expected. Instead of laughs and relationship goals comments, people were asking if we were actually okay, if this was real, why Simon looked so hurt. Our house sat in suburban silence when I pulled into the driveway. Simon's car was there, but the lights were off except for Laya's bedroom window. Our 7-year-old daughter was probably getting ready for bed, blissfully unaware that Mommy had just humiliated Daddy in front of half the city. I found Simon in his home office, still in his work clothes, staring at his computer screen. Financial spreadsheets glowed in the darkness, his comfort zone when the world got too complicated. "Hey," I said softly, leaning against the doorframe. "I'm sorry about tonight. It was just supposed to be funny." He didn't look up. "Funny?" "Yes, funny. It's this trend everyone's doing. You reject your partner publicly, then reveal it's a joke. It's supposed to be romantic in a weird way." "Romantic?" His voice was flat, emotionless. "Simon, come on. You know I didn't mean any of that stuff I said." Finally, he turned to face me. In the blue glow of the monitor, he looked older, worn down in a way I'd never seen before. "Didn't you?" "Of course not. It was just for the video. The part about me never making you feel special. About you deserving better. About needing someone who really sees you." He paused. "Was that just for the video too?" I opened my mouth to deny it, but something in his expression stopped me. There was a finality there, like he'd already made up his mind about something. "Where's the envelope from?" I asked instead. "You didn't open it?" "I wanted to talk to you first." Simon laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How considerate." "Simon, you're scaring me. What's in the envelope?" He stood up, closing the laptop with a soft click. "I think you know." "I don't know. That's why I'm asking." "Then open it, but not here." He walked past me toward the door. "I don't want Laya to hear whatever reaction you're planning." "What's that supposed to mean?" But he was already gone, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. I heard our bedroom door close, then the soft click of the lock. Simon had never locked me out of our bedroom, not once in 8 years. I stood in his office, surrounded by the evidence of his methodical life, color-coded files, perfectly organized desk, family photos arranged at precise angles, everything in its place, everything accounted for, except me. The envelope felt heavier in my hands than it should have. My name stared back at me in Simon's careful script, and for the first time since the restaurant, I felt genuinely afraid. I took it to the kitchen and sat at our breakfast bar under the bright, overhead lights. Whatever was inside, I needed to see it clearly. The envelope wasn't sealed, just folded closed. Inside were printed pages, bank statements, text message screenshots, photos I thought I'd deleted, and a letter in Simon's handwriting. My blood turned to ice as I recognized the evidence laid out with financial precision. Lunch receipts, from places I'd told him I'd never been. Screenshots of text conversations with Kellan that I thought were private. Photos of us together that someone had taken from across the street. But it was the letter that made my hands shake. Erythra, I've known about Kellan for 3 months. I know about the lunches, the coffee dates, the afternoon visits to his apartment while Laya was at school. I know about the lies you've told me, our daughter, and our friends. I hired a private investigator after I found the first text message on your phone. Everything in this envelope is legal evidence of your affair. I've consulted with a lawyer, and I'm filing for divorce. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just tired. I had hoped tonight would be different. I thought maybe you'd chosen the restaurant to tell me the truth, to try to work things out. Instead, you chose to humiliate me for social media content. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. You'll be hearing from my attorney on Monday. Simon. The pages scattered across the granite countertop like evidence at a crime scene. Each bank statement, each photo, each screenshot was a nail in the coffin of the life I'd built. But the worst part wasn't the evidence. It was the date on the letter. He'd written it 3 days ago, before tonight, before the restaurant, before I'd made a fool of both of us for a viral video. He'd known exactly what I was planning to do, and he'd let me do it anyway. My phone buzzed with notifications, comments on the video, messages from friends asking if I was okay, shares and reactions from strangers who thought they'd witnessed a real breakup. In a way, they had. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the kitchen scrolling through the evidence Simon had compiled, trying to figure out how he'd gotten so much information without me knowing. The bank statements showed charges I'd forgotten about, lunches with Kellan, parking fees near his apartment, even a hotel coffee shop from the afternoon we'd spent talking about leaving our respective partners. But we'd never actually done anything. Not really. Yes, there were feelings. Yes, there was emotional intimacy I wasn't getting at home. But we'd never crossed the physical line. Every meeting was just coffee, just conversation, just two people who understood each other in ways our spouses didn't. Simon was making it sound like some torrid affair when it was really just friendship. By morning, I'd crafted my defense. I deleted the restaurant video and posted a new one, a tearful explanation about how social media trends can go wrong, how couples need to communicate better, how sometimes what looks bad is really just a misunderstanding. The comments were sympathetic. Relationship goals turned into charming couples counseling and work it out. I felt better already. Simon left early for work without saying goodbye. Laya ate her cereal in confused silence, asking why Daddy seemed sad, why Mummy's eyes were red, why the house felt different. Daddy and I had a little disagreement, I explained, braiding her dark hair with practiced efficiency. But we're going to work it out. Sometimes grown-ups need to have difficult conversations. Like when you yelled at him at the restaurant. My hand stilled. You saw that? Emma's mum showed me on her phone. She said you were famous. The video. Of course, other parents had seen it. Laya's school friends, their families, probably half the PTA by now. I'd have to do more damage control there too. It wasn't real, baby. It was just pretend. Like when you put on plays with your dolls. Laya nodded, but she didn't look convinced. 7-year-olds have a way of seeing through adult lies that's both impressive and terrifying. At work, my colleague Dina was waiting with coffee and concerned questions. As an HR coordinator, I was used to managing other people's workplace drama, but being the subject of it felt different. "Girl, what happened last night?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "That video was intense. Just a prank gone wrong. Simon didn't get the joke." He looked really hurt, Erythra, like genuinely devastated. He's just not comfortable with social media stuff. You know how finance guys are. Everything has to be serious and professional. Dina sipped her latte thoughtfully. Maybe. But the way he handed you that envelope, what was in it? Nothing important, just work stuff he forgot to give me earlier. The lie came easily, but Dina's expression suggested she wasn't buying it. We'd been friends for 3 years, ever since she'd transferred from the Seattle office, and she knew me well enough to spot my tells. Erythra, can I ask you something as a friend? Sure. Are you and Simon okay? Like really okay? I forced a laugh. Of course we're okay. Why wouldn't we be? Because you've been different lately, distracted, and you've been taking a lot of long lunches. My stomach dropped. If Dina had noticed my schedule changes, who else had? HR coordinators were supposed to be discreet, professional, above reproach. My personal life bleeding into work was dangerous territory. I've been dealing with some family stuff, nothing serious. Is that why you've been texting so much during meetings? Family stuff? The question felt like a trap. Dina's tone was still friendly, but there was something sharper underneath. She was fishing for information, and I wasn't sure why. What are you getting at, Dina? Nothing. I just want to make sure you're okay. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? I nodded and changed the subject, but the conversation left me uneasy. If my coworkers were noticing behavioral changes, Simon probably had too. Maybe that's how he'd figured out something was wrong in the first place. My phone buzzed with a text from Kellan. Saw the video. Are you okay? Should we talk? I deleted it without responding. The last thing I needed was more evidence of our communication. Simon had already proven he was monitoring everything more carefully than I'd realized. But by lunch, I was desperate to talk to someone who understood. Someone who didn't judge me for wanting something more than suburban domesticity and financial planning discussions. I met Kellan at our usual spot, a small cafe downtown that Simon never visited. He was already there when I arrived, looking nervous in a way I'd never seen before. Erythra, we need to stop meeting like this, he said before I'd even sat down. What do you mean? I mean your husband knows about us. That video last night, the envelope he gave you. What was in it? I hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. Evidence, photos, bank statements, text screenshots. Kellan went pale. Screenshots of our texts. Some of them. The ones where we talked about leaving our partners? Maybe. He stood up abruptly. I can't do this anymore. My marriage, my career, I can't risk it for coffee dates and hypothetical conversations. Kellan, wait. No, Erythra, this was a mistake. All of it. He left me sitting alone in the cafe, just like Simon had left me alone in the restaurant. The pattern was becoming uncomfortably clear. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. There had to be a way to fix this, to explain everything in a way that made sense. Simon was hurt and overreacting, but we could work through it. We had a daughter together, a life together. 8 years didn't just disappear because of a few misunderstood friendships. I drove home determined to have an honest conversation with my husband, to explain my side, to show him that his evidence didn't tell the whole story. The house was empty when I arrived. No Simon, no Laya, just a note on the kitchen counter. Took Laya to my parents' house for the weekend. We need space to think. Don't call. S. The silence felt different now, not peaceful, but ominous, like the calm before a storm that was already building on the horizon. Sunday dinner at Helen and Martin Vale's house had been a monthly tradition for 6 years. Simon's parents lived in a pristine colonial 20 minutes away, where Helen had taught elementary school for 30 years, and Martin had engineered water treatment systems until his retirement. I'd always felt judged in their perfectly appointed dining room, surrounded by family photos that chronicled Simon's achievements and their obvious disappointment that their son had married someone they considered beneath him. But this Sunday felt different. When I arrived alone, Simon had taken Laya earlier and hadn't invited me. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Erythra, Helen said coolly, not getting up from her chair. How nice of you to join us. Hi, Helen. Martin. I kissed Martin's cheek, but he seemed uncomfortable with the contact. Laya ran to hug me, her small arms tight around my waist. "Mommy, I missed you." "I missed you too, baby." I looked around the room, taking in the tension. "Where's Simon?" "He had some errands to run," Martin said diplomatically. "What kind of errands?" Helen set down her wine glass with more force than necessary. "The kind that require legal consultation." The words hit like a slap. "Legal consultation." "Sit down, Erythra," Helen said. "We need to talk." I remained standing. "About what?" "About what you've done to my son." "I haven't done anything to Simon. We had a disagreement, that's all." "A disagreement?" Helen laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call having an affair?" "I'm not having an affair." "Then explain the evidence Simon showed us." My mouth went dry. "He showed you?" "Bank statements, text messages, photos." Helen stood up, her teacher's authority filling the room. "Did you think we wouldn't find out? Did you think you could humiliate our son publicly, and we'd just pretend it didn't happen? It was just a prank, a social media trend. I wasn't trying to humiliate anyone." "A prank?" Helen's voice rose. "You stood up in a crowded restaurant and told my son he wasn't good enough for you. You threw a ring at him like he was garbage. And you filmed it for strangers to laugh at. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Then how was it supposed to happen, Erythra? What was the plan?" I looked at Martin for support, but he was studying his hands. Laya was playing with her dolls in the corner, hopefully too distracted to follow the adult conversation. The trend is that you reject your partner, then reveal it's a joke. You laugh together and show how strong your relationship is. It's supposed to be romantic. "Romantic," Helen repeated flatly. "And the affair with Kellan Drake, is that romantic too?" "There is no affair. We're friends. We talk. You talk about leaving your husband. You talk about starting a new life together. You meet in secret and lie about where you've been." Those conversations were hypothetical, fantasy. Everyone has thoughts about different lives. Everyone doesn't act on those thoughts, Erythra. Everyone doesn't pursue emotional affairs while their husband is working to support their family. The accusation stung because it was partially true. My relationship with Kellan had crossed lines, even if we'd never been physical. But Helen was making it sound like some calculated betrayal when it was really just two people finding comfort in each other's company. "You don't understand what it's like," I said. "Simon works all the time. When he's home, he's tired or stressed or focused on finances. We never talk about dreams or possibilities or anything interesting." "So you found someone who would?" "I found someone who listened to me, who made me feel like I mattered." "And what about Laya? Did you think about how this would affect her?" I glanced at my daughter, still absorbed in her dolls. "Laya doesn't know anything about this. She knows her parents are fighting. She knows something's wrong. Children aren't stupid, Erythra. We can fix this. Simon and I can work through it." Helen shook her head. "I don't think you understand the situation you're in. Simon isn't just hurt. He's done. He's consulted with lawyers, gathered evidence, made plans." "Plans for what?" "Divorce, custody, protecting himself and Laya from further damage." The room spun slightly. "Custody? Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? You've been lying for months, meeting with another man, emotionally checking out of your marriage. You humiliated Simon publicly and showed the world that you don't respect him or your family." "I made one mistake." "One mistake?" Helen's voice was incredulous. "Which one? The affair, the lies, the public humiliation, the complete disregard for your daughter's well-being." "I never disregarded Laya's well-being." "You put your need for attention above your family's stability. You turned your marriage into content for strangers to consume. You taught your daughter that relationships are disposable entertainment." Each accusation hit harder than the last because they contained enough truth to hurt. I had prioritized my own needs, my own desires for something more exciting than domestic routine. but I wasn't the villain Helen was making me out to be. "You've never liked me," I said finally. "From the beginning, you thought Simon could do better." "This isn't about what I think of you, Erythra. This is about what you've done to a good man who loved you." "Loved? Past tense?" Helen's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. "You'll have to ask Simon about that. But if I were you, I'd be less concerned about his feelings and more concerned about your legal situation." "What legal situation?" "The evidence he's compiled, the witnesses who saw you with Kellan, the financial records showing your deception, the video of you publicly humiliating him. None of that is illegal. No, but it's relevant in divorce proceedings, especially custody decisions." The threat was clear. Simon wasn't just leaving me. He was building a case to take Laya away. "He can't take my daughter from me. He can seek primary custody based on your demonstrated poor judgment and deceptive behavior. I'm her mother. And he's her father. A father who's been present, honest, and stable while you've been pursuing other interests." I looked at Laya again, my heart breaking at the thought of losing her. Whatever mistakes I'd made, however complicated my feelings had become, she was the most important thing in my life. "What do I need to do?" I asked quietly. "That's between you and Simon. But if I were you, I'd stop making excuses and start taking responsibility for the damage you've caused." The front door opened, and Simon walked in carrying legal folders. He stopped when he saw me, his expression unreadable. "Erythra, I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk. I think we've said everything we need to say." "Please, Simon, give me a chance to explain." He looked at his parents, then at Laya, then back at me. 5 minutes outside." We stood on the front porch in the fading afternoon light, the suburban street quiet around us. Simon looked tired, older, like he'd aged years in the past few days. "I'm sorry," I said, "for all of it. The restaurant, the lies, Kellan. I never meant for things to go this far." "How far did you mean for them to go?" "I don't know. I was confused, unhappy. I felt invisible in our marriage." "So you found someone who made you feel visible. It wasn't supposed to be romantic. It just evolved." "Into what, exactly? What were you planning to do?" I couldn't answer because I didn't know. My relationship with Kellan had existed in a fantasy space where consequences didn't matter and real life could be postponed indefinitely. I wasn't planning anything. I was just enjoying feeling appreciated. At my expense. At Laya's expense. I never wanted to hurt you or Laya. But you did hurt us. You've been hurting us for months with your lies and your emotional absence and your complete disregard for our family. I can fix this. I can end things with Kellan, focus on our marriage, be the wife and mother you need me to be." Simon was quiet for a long moment, studying the legal folders in his hands. "It's too late for that, Erythra." "It doesn't have to be. We can go to counseling, work through this together." "You humiliated me in front of strangers for social media content. After months of lying to my face and meeting with another man. You turned our marriage into entertainment. It was just a stupid trend. It wasn't just a trend. It was the final proof that you don't respect me, our marriage, or our family. It was you choosing viral content over human decency." The finality in his voice terrified me. "Simon, please, I love you." "Do you? Or do you love the security I provide? The stable home, the reliable income, the responsible co-parent?" I opened my mouth to protest, but the words wouldn't come, because somewhere in his accusation was a truth I didn't want to examine. "I filed for divorce," he said quietly. "You'll be served with papers tomorrow. You can't take Laya from me. I'm not taking her from you. I'm protecting her from the chaos you've created. You'll have visitation rights, but I'm seeking primary custody." "On what grounds?" "Emotional instability, deceptive behavior, poor judgment. Take your pick." He turned to go back inside, but I grabbed his arm. "This isn't over, Simon." He looked down at my hand on his arm, then back at my face. "Yes, it is. He went inside, leaving me alone on the porch with the weight of my choices pressing down like a physical force. Through the window, I could see Laya playing with her grandparents, Simon joining them on the floor with her dolls. A perfect family scene that no longer included me. For the first time since this all began, I understood that some mistakes can't be undone with apologies or explanations or social media damage control. Some mistakes change everything forever. The divorce papers arrived Monday morning via certified mail, just as Simon had promised. 23 pages of legal language that reduced 8 years of marriage to a list of assets, debts, and custody arrangements. I called in sick to work and spent the day reading through the documents with growing horror. Simon had been thorough. Bank statements, phone records, witness statements from people who'd seen me with Kellan, even screenshots of my social media posts that painted me as attention-seeking and unstable. But it was the custody section that broke me. Simon was seeking primary physical custody of Laya, with me getting supervised visitation every other weekend. Supervised, like I was a danger to my own daughter. I called every divorce lawyer in the city, but Simon had been smart about that too. He'd already consulted with the best ones, creating conflicts of interest that prevented me from hiring them. The lawyer I finally found, a young associate at a small firm, took one look at the evidence against me and suggested I consider accepting Simon's terms. "Your husband has built a very strong case," she explained over coffee in her cramped office. "The affair, the public humiliation, the documented deception, it all paints a picture of someone who prioritizes personal gratification over family stability." "But I never physically cheated. Doesn't that matter?" Emotional affairs can be just as damaging to a marriage, especially when there's evidence of planning to leave the relationship. These text messages with Kellan Drake suggest you were actively considering ending your marriage. Those were just fantasies. Everyone has thoughts about different lives. Everyone doesn't document those thoughts in writing and meet secretly with potential partners. I left her office feeling defeated. Simon had outmaneuvered me completely, and I was just beginning to understand how carefully he'd planned this entire process. At home, I found him packing boxes in our bedroom. His clothes, his books, his personal items, everything that made the space ours was being systematically removed. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I've rented a place downtown. Closer to work, closer to Laya's school." "When?" "I'm moving out this weekend." "And Laya?" "She'll stay with me during the week, with you on weekends, until the court decides on permanent arrangements." "Supervised weekends." He paused in his packing. "That's what the filing says, yes." "I'm not dangerous to my own daughter, Simon." "You're not stable, Erythra. You make impulsive decisions based on your emotional needs without considering the consequences for anyone else." "That's not true." "Isn't it? The affair with Kellan, the restaurant stunt, the lies you've told Laya about why we're fighting. Everything you do is about managing your image instead of dealing with reality." He was right, and we both knew it, but admitting that felt like surrendering completely. "I can change. I can be better." "I'm sure you can. But not with me, and not in this marriage." He continued packing, each item he removed making the room feel more empty, more final. "What about our friends?" I asked. "What are you telling people?" "The truth, that we're getting divorced because our marriage is over." "Are you telling them about Kellan?" "I don't need to. They'll figure it out on their own." He was right about that too. Our friend group had already started choosing sides, and most of them were choosing Simon. The restaurant video had made me look unstable and cruel, and my subsequent social media posts trying to explain it away had only made things worse. Dina was the only one still speaking to me, and even she was asking uncomfortable questions about my behavior over the past few months. "I saw Kellan at lunch today," she mentioned casually during one of our coffee breaks. "He seemed nervous when I mentioned you." "We're just friends." "Are you?" "Because he acted like someone with something to hide." What did he say? Nothing. That's what was weird about it. Usually he's chatty, flirty even. Today he could barely make eye contact. I made a mental note to text Kellan about being more careful around my co-workers, then realized I couldn't text him anymore. Simon was probably still monitoring my communications, and any contact with Kellan would only strengthen his case against me. The isolation was suffocating. Simon wasn't speaking to me, except about logistics. Laya was confused and clingy, asking constantly when Daddy was coming home. My in-laws had made their position clear. My own sister Lauren was supportive, but lived across the country and didn't understand the full situation. I was alone with the consequences of choices I'd made without fully understanding their weight. Friday evening, I helped Laya pack a bag for her first weekend at Simon's new apartment. She was excited about the adventure, unaware that this arrangement might become permanent. "Will you come visit me at Daddy's new place?" she asked, carefully folding her favorite pajamas. "Maybe someday, baby. Why can't we all live together anymore? Sometimes grown-ups need different things, and it's better for everyone if they live separately for a while." Like when Emma's parents got divorced. My heart clenched. "It's different, Laya. Daddy and I both love you very much, and that will never change." She nodded solemnly, too young to understand but old enough to sense that her world was shifting in ways beyond her control. Simon arrived at 6 to pick her up. We managed a civil handoff, both of us focused on making the transition easy for Laya. "I'll have her back Sunday evening," he said. "Okay, have fun, you two." I watched them drive away, my daughter's face pressed to the window, waving goodbye until they disappeared around the corner. The house felt enormous and empty without them. I wandered through rooms that had once felt like home, but now felt like a museum of a life that was ending. In Simon's office, I found a folder he'd left behind. Inside were printed emails between him and his lawyer, detailing strategy for the custody case. The clinical language they used to describe my behavior was devastating. Emotional instability, deceptive patterns, prioritizing personal gratification over child welfare. But it was the final email that destroyed me. "Mr. Vale, based on the evidence you've provided and Mrs. Vale's documented behavior patterns, I'm confident we can secure primary custody with minimal visitation rights." The restaurant incident, combined with the affair documentation, paints a clear picture of someone who lacks the judgment necessary for responsible parenting. I recommend we push for supervised visitation initially, with the possibility of increased access only after she completes court-mandated counseling and demonstrates sustained behavioral changes. They weren't just taking my husband, they were taking my daughter. And the worst part was, I'd given them all the ammunition they needed. The custody hearing took place 6 weeks later, in a sterile courthouse conference room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat across from Simon and his lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman who'd built her reputation on protecting fathers' rights in contentious divorces. My own lawyer looked nervous, shuffling through papers that contained little ammunition for our defense. We'd tried to build a case around my role as Laya's primary caregiver, my flexible work schedule, my emotional bond with my daughter. But Simon's evidence was overwhelming. "Your Honor," his lawyer began, "Mr. Vale has documented a pattern of deceptive behavior, emotional instability, and poor judgment that directly impacts Mrs. Vale's ability to provide a stable environment for their daughter." She presented the evidence methodically, bank statements showing my secret meetings with Kellan, printed text messages discussing leaving my marriage, witness statements from restaurant patrons who'd seen me humiliate Simon publicly, even social media analysis showing my pattern of attention-seeking behavior. "Mrs. Vale has demonstrated repeatedly that she prioritizes her personal desires over her family's well-being," the lawyer continued. "The restaurant incident, which she filmed and posted online, shows a complete disregard for her husband's dignity and her daughter's emotional security. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to explain the context, the misunderstandings, the way things had spiraled beyond my control, but every excuse sounded hollow in the face of documented evidence. I made mistakes, I admitted to the judge, but I love my daughter, and I've never done anything to hurt her. Mrs. Vale, the judge said kindly but firmly, emotional affairs and public humiliation of a co-parent do hurt children, even when that's not the intention. Children need stability, honesty, and parents who can put their needs first. The ruling was swift and devastating. Simon was awarded primary custody, with me getting supervised visitation every other weekend and one evening per week. I would need to complete court-mandated counseling and demonstrate 6 months of stable behavior before unsupervised visits could be considered. I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd lost everything that mattered, but Simon wasn't finished. 2 days later, I was called into my supervisor's office at work. Dinah was there, looking uncomfortable, along with our department head and an HR representative I didn't recognize. Erythra, my supervisor began, we need to discuss some concerns that have been brought to our attention regarding your conduct during work hours. They had evidence, phone records showing personal calls during meetings, timestamps on my badge entries and exits that didn't match my reported schedule, even security footage of me meeting Kellan in the parking garage during lunch breaks. We've also received complaints about your social media presence reflecting poorly on the company, the HR representative added. The restaurant incident has been shared widely, and several clients have expressed concerns about your judgment and professionalism. I was suspended pending investigation, which we all knew was just a polite way of saying I was fired. Walking out of the office building with my personal items in a cardboard box, I realized Simon had orchestrated this too. He'd probably provided the evidence, maybe even encouraged the complaints. He was systematically dismantling every aspect of my life with the same methodical precision he brought to financial planning. That evening, I sat in my empty house with a bottle of wine and my laptop, scrolling through social media posts about my failed marriage. The restaurant video had taken on a life of its own, shared and reshared with commentary about entitled wives and attention-seeking behavior. I'd become a cautionary tale, a viral example of how not to treat your spouse. The comments were brutal. Imagine humiliating your husband for likes and follows. This is why men don't trust women anymore. Feel sorry for their kid having a mum like this. Hope he takes her for everything in the divorce. I closed the laptop and poured another glass of wine. Outside, the suburban street was quiet, families settling in for normal evening routines that I was no longer part of. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Saw the news about the job. Are you okay? I started to type a response about being fine, about having plans, about this being temporary. But the lies felt exhausting now. No, I typed back, I'm not okay. She called immediately, her voice full of concern and confusion. What happened, Erythra? This doesn't sound like you. I told her everything. The affair that wasn't quite an affair, the restaurant stunt that had backfired spectacularly, the divorce, the custody battle, the job loss. All of it spilled out in a rush of words and tears. Jesus, she said when I finished, you really fucked this up. Thanks for the support. I'm not being mean, I'm being honest. You had a good life, a good man, a beautiful daughter, and you threw it away for what? Some guy who won't even return your calls now? Social media attention. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, but it did happen like this, and now you have to figure out how to live with the consequences. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness thinking about consequences, about choices made without considering their weight, about the difference between wanting something and being willing to pay its true cost. Simon had paid that cost too, of course. He'd lost his marriage, his intact family, his suburban dream, but he'd chosen to lose those things on his terms, with dignity and preparation and legal protection. I'd lost everything the same way I'd gained Kellan's attention, impulsively, dramatically, without thinking about what came next. 3 months later, I moved into a small apartment across town. The divorce was final, the custody arrangement permanent until I could prove sustained stability. I found a job at a smaller company that didn't care about my social media history. Every other weekend, I picked up Laya for supervised visits at a family center downtown. We played board games and talked about school, while a court-appointed observer took notes about my parenting skills. Laya adapted to the new routine with the resilience children show in broken situations. She talked about Daddy's apartment, about Grandma Helen's weekend visits, about the stability Simon had built for her while I'd been chasing fantasies. "Do you miss living with Daddy?" I asked during one visit. "Sometimes," she said, focused on her coloring book, "but he's happier now." "What do you mean?" "He smiles more. He doesn't look worried all the time." The observation stung because it was probably true. Simon had looked worried for months before our divorce, carrying the weight of knowledge I hadn't known he possessed. "Are you happier too, Mommy?" I considered the question seriously. Was I happier? I was lonelier, certainly, poorer, less secure, professionally diminished. But there was something to be said for living without the constant effort of maintaining lies and managing competing relationships. "I'm learning to be," I told her honestly. 6 months later, Simon remarried. Not Kellan. That relationship had imploded completely when the legal pressure mounted. A woman from his office, someone stable and kind who understood the value of quiet love over dramatic gestures. I heard about the wedding through mutual friends who still spoke to me occasionally. They said it was small, elegant, focused on family rather than spectacle. Everything my own wedding had been, before I'd forgotten why those values mattered. Laya was the flower girl, beautiful in a white dress Simon had helped her choose. She sent me pictures afterward, glowing with happiness at being part of something joyful and stable. I was happy for her, and surprisingly, I was happy for Simon too. He deserved peace after the chaos I'd brought to his life. As for me, I learned to live smaller, quieter, more honestly. I deleted most of my social media accounts and stopped chasing viral moments. I focused on rebuilding my relationship with my daughter, one supervised visit at a time. It took 2 years to earn back unsupervised visitation rights. By then, Laya had a stepmother she loved and a stable home that didn't include me as a primary figure. I was learning to be grateful for whatever role I was allowed to play in her life. The restaurant video still surfaces sometimes, shared by people who don't know the real story behind it. When I see it, I remember the woman I was that night, so focused on creating a moment that I forgot to consider its cost. I rejected him in front of everyone for a trend, thinking it would make us iconic. Instead, it made me infamous and him free. He didn't argue or shout when I humiliated him for content.